Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Personality Yoda and the Five Voices interviews. And for those of you who've been following the series, today is a particularly exciting one that I know you'll love. We're going to look at the Creative Connector Pioneer. And I'm joined by the very lovely and soon to be lovely to you as well, Miss Becky Wolfe. So Becky, welcome to Personality Yoda. Thank you for agreeing to come and represent your species so well, hopefully on Personality Yoda. How are you?
Thanks so much. I'm doing well. Thanks so much, Steve. I appreciate the opportunity.
That's what I love about INFJs. They're so gracious, Becky. My Creative Connector Pioneer is always doing things for other people. So tell us, first of all, Becky, a little bit about you, a little bit about your background. Everyone always wants to know, who is this person that I see before me? What shaped her? Where's she come from? Where did she grow up? What's she done with her life so far? So take a few minutes just to give everyone a little bit of context about who this amazing lady they're going to get to find out a bit more about today.
Oh, thanks, Steve. So I'm originally from Pennsylvania, so close to Erie, PA, and then moved to Canton, Ohio, which I'm currently based in Canton. Moved here in about 2006. I am a single mom to two boys who are 9 and 6 and who are absolutely amazing. My background is actually in medicine. I'm a physician assistant. I've been a PA for about 15 years. And I have done various fields of medicine. In this last year and a half, I've actually transitioned to be a full-time health coach and then a part-time coach with Giant right now. Got into health coaching in 2012 after having my first son. Actually, he was born in 2011, came back to work in early 2012. And I was getting two questions from patients, and they were, how do I lose weight and how do I get off of my medicine? And I felt like I was doing a huge disservice to patients because I wasn't able to educate them on how to do that. Most of our time in office was spent on how do I, the medication that they were taking, side effects, disease, and I was not fulfilling what they wanted, which was to help them get off of their medicine. So saw those questions and feel like my patients could see that I was trying to get healthy after having a baby, and decided to look into various options on how to help them. And decided to become a health coach and started health coaching after hours in the cardiology practice I was working in. And I know, so, and life just has so many twists and turns, but it was awesome. It was such a great experience. And I think the major shift at that point for me was I had a client come in, actually a patient come in to see his regular cardiologist, and the doc came and got me and he said, "Hey, Mr. Smith in room 4 wants to see you." And I said, "Okay." And this particular situation, I think, was impactful for me because it was a day in office where I was behind like an hour, hadn't eaten lunch, like all those things, just kind of feeling a little frustrated. Walked back into his room, sat down and was like, "Hey, Mr. Smith, how are you? What's going on?" And he looked at me in the eye and he said, "I want you to know that what you're doing matters." And I was like taken aback by that situation. And he said, "I want you to know I've gotten off of all of my medicines but one. And my cholesterol is better than it's ever been. And he's like, I just want you to know that what you're doing matters." And that was my first coaching experience. That was really impactful.
Oh, that's amazing. This is you and me. Ignore the 4 million people watching. Remind me at the end, I'm going to connect you to a good friend of mine who is running a company called Vojo Health. And she's taken me on as her project on the grounds if she can get me to eat healthy, lose weight, and be better with my joints. And she basically has just been mapping my DNA and telling me all the things which are good for me, bad for me, my omega-3s, my omega-6s. Apparently, the good news is I'm not predisposed to Alzheimer's, but she could virtually tell me when I'm going to die and what of.
Oh, my goodness.
But she comes from a medical background as well, and is another person who just goes, how do I help people get healthy and well? So remind me back at the end of the show.
Okay.
Forget the rest of you watching. I'd love to connect you because I think there may be some synergy in what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
So Becky, another question is, what do you do for fun? That's you, in terms of all the things you're responsible for, which obviously come first for the way you're wired. But in any of those fun moments when you're not looking after 6 to 9 year olds and being a super mum, what are the sort of things that, Becky, you would love to do or do for fun?
So I love to read. I'm an avid reader. I make time for that every day. And I love to run. So that's another passion that I have. Cooking, I love to cook. So those are like the big things that I enjoy, but lots of different things. My oldest son plays baseball, so I love being team mom and coach mom for that team.
Of course.
Yeah.
You sound like a Susie Lance true clone, in the sense of, if you're on the same track team as Susie, then I'm going to think there's some conspiracy, because everyone who comes on the show has been running with Susie at some point.
I didn't. That was one connection we never had. So.
Well, there we go. That's delighted to hear that, Becky, because it's very small gene pool. So you alluded a little bit to how you transitioned from physician's assistant to health coach and Giant. But so talk a little bit about how you got connected to Giant in the first place. And the thing we're always asking people in the Five Voices interviews is, you've discovered that you're a creative connector, pioneer, nurturer, guardian, which to many of our listeners means like, is this some kind of cult I've joined? But they inherently trust people like you. So talk us a little bit about how you got connected to Giant, how somebody who obviously is very well educated and very, very mature in these things ended up with a Five Voices story. So go on, take some time on that for us.
Sure. So the same cardiology practice I was working in, another impactful thing happened. They actually, there were 7 physicians in that practice and they couldn't get along. So ended up, they dispersed suddenly, and 50 of us lost our jobs, so me included. And at that point, that was part of my identity, because I had poured everything into that practice. Trying to figure out ways to improve it, and just like having those extra creative outlets of like, how can I make things better in that practice? So I lost my job, and then was trying to kind of find my way after that. Took on some urgent care positions. Was working in a university clinic, which I love. I love everything that I've ever done. Just making different connections and helping people, but just felt like something was missing. So that happened in 2015 when I lost my job. So then a couple years went by. 2018 was when I actually found Giant. And I think honestly, it was Susie had posted on Facebook, and then Al D'Angelo had posted on Facebook. And I'm like, I wonder what this is all about. But I think the catalyst to me actually saying yes to that opportunity was that I wanted to improve and be a leader in some form in fashion, because I had such a terrible experience, or a negative, and like the positive and negative experiences shape us. So, so I ended up saying yes, not fully understanding what I was getting myself into at that point. So I said yes, and then was like just learning about everything as we went along. But ended up being in Susie's group, so she was my Sherpa. So it was called MX Core back then. So went through the year-long experience with Giant, and our first gathering together was all about Five Voices. And I hadn't taken Myers-Briggs. I hadn't done any of the personality assessments up until that point. And it was like looking on the other side of me, like, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense as to why I have the passions and the drive that I have. So it was like a light bulb clicked. I'm like, oh my goodness. But that's how the first experience that I had with it. So then going from there, end of 2019, was kind of faced with the situation of, now that I know this about myself, what do I do? And was looking for a different job to transition to, kind of went through that program, was like, okay, this is why I'm not feeling fulfilled. So what do I do about it? And started looking for jobs again and came across a company that was hiring a full-time health coach. I applied, and I was accepted, interviewed twice, and I got the position. So I was like, oh, this is amazing. Within 6 months, I actually was promoted within that position to lead a team. So I was like, if I'm ever promoted into a leadership position, I want to be a guide with Giant, because why not? It was something that was incredibly empowering to me. So came back to Giant about 6 months ago. And then as life continually shifts and changes, I've met some people in the medical community who have allowed me to come into their spaces and teach Five Voices. And it has been incredibly impactful.
That's so good. We love story in our world. And for Jeremy and I, it never ceased to amaze us, the amazing people who found their way into something that began, out of nothing really, as we kind of sat in a large house in England about 8 years ago. So the thought that people like you were impacted by it. Tell us a little bit about that creative connector. Were there any particular ahas in terms of you going, oh my goodness, or that makes sense of why certain things have been life-giving or certain things were not life-giving? Talk to us a little bit about that voices piece.
Absolutely. So I remember one meeting with our core group for the leadership intensive over that year, and we were talking about our values. And for some reason, I had no idea why I liked freedom so much, but it was like one of my core values of like, I need to kind of have space to shift and move around. And that was just like an aha moment for me. It's like, oh, because I'm built that way. I'm wired that way. The other thing that I was like trying to figure out, I'm like, but I'm an introvert, but I really love people. So, but I needed that time away to really like charge my battery, but then I really wanted to give back to people. And then when Susie and I had conversations about the creative voice, it's like, you can see so far in the future and dream and innovate. And you're like a problem solver and you love to think outside of the box. And then you do that for people. It just made sense to me. So it was just like, oh my goodness, I had no idea why I had like the passion to be helping people until then. So
I think the thing is, it's very hard to unlearn this stuff and to remember what the world looked like before you understood yourself and other people. And, you know, they call me Yoda, which is probably because I look like Yoda now. But for 20 years, I was joking to say I was probably the least emotionally intelligent male you'd ever met. And, you know, you'll know a fair few that will be right up there as potential candidates. And I had no idea the impact on me. And once you've seen the green letters and the numbers going down the screen like the Matrix, it's really hard not to unsee it. And
yes.
I love those things. They're so good. And Susie's one of the great Sherpas of this life. I feel like, I don't know whether I can have Sherpa grandchildren on the grounds. Obviously, I was Susie's Sherpa, and that's so it's a bit like Amway, but without any money, I guess. So you're like 100x squared for me. So I feel slightly paternal, Becky. So forgive me. Anyway, that's so cool. I really appreciate the context and the honesty, and you know who you are, and it all resonates and it all makes sense. So I guess the question we often ask is, because people are thinking, well, I have some of these in my team, or I might have some of these in my family, and always I'd ask is to go, look, if I was going to be a great boss, or what we would call a liberating leader to you, we have a particular tool called the Support Challenge Matrix, which I know you'll be very familiar with, which talks about this idea of saying the very best leaders create a culture of empowerment opportunity where they actually liberate people to be the very best they can be. And to do that, you have to learn how to calibrate high support and high challenge. But most people haven't spent 20 years anally learning all this stuff. So one of the things I often ask when we're with people, as a great example that you can do with your own teams, is to go, just talk to me a little bit about, if I was going to be a great boss for you, how would I do high support? What would high challenge look like? What advice would you give me, assuming I knew nothing? And then I'll probably add a few things over the top of it, just to kind of, for those who I know follow these and take notes. So Becky, what does high support and high challenge look like for a creative connector pioneer?
So I think of support in the realm of business and somebody who is leading me as giving me the opportunity to be wrong when I say something or not make sense, and clarify what's coming out of my mouth, because I know sometimes they don't make sense, but my brain is thinking so far ahead that sometimes I need somebody to come in with clarifying questions.
Yeah.
So having that psychological safety is incredible. And I worked with a nonprofit for a while, and we actually went through 5 voices. And to see the dynamic of the different people in our group, it was like so clear as to why I was quiet in that group, because there were other louder voices. So for me, having that safety to be able to speak up and say, you know, these are the visions that I have, and this, you know, I need some ideas on how to get there, or, you know, just having the ability to speak up and feel comfortable enough to do so. Challenge for me is giving me the opportunity, if there's a problem to solve, is like having this space to kind of step back and have that space, but then allowing me to bring it and then helping me to take action in some way, holding me accountable to that, or at least like giving me the opportunity to come up with solutions. I love innovation. I love dreaming. I love problem solving, thinking outside of the box, all of those things. And I think for a creative, it's like giving them the space to actually do that. And then almost like giving them a way to take action, because we were action oriented individuals. We want to be able to do something to actually move forward or help the business move forward. And we're incredibly loyal people. I feel like we're just incredibly loyal, and we want to help in any way that we can.
So good. So good. I mean, I agree with all of that. I always say that whenever you deal with a creative first voice, that there are 3 things which almost, and they all begin with C, so easy to remember. You always have to go communication, celebration, and completion. So in the sense of most creatives often are not as clear in their external communication as the piercing clarity of the internal vision and dream they've had. So being a great boss for you is doing what you've actually described, which is I never judge a creative on what they say first. But if a creative first voice is speaking, they really have something to say, but it might take a few clarifying questions to get the gold out. And if I judge them on what they say first and close them down, then eventually they begin to believe they don't have a contribution to make and become silent. So that's one of the most important things, that you actually celebrate the fact that Becky's speaking, we need to listen, and we need to make sure that we work to get to the point where we're able to say, Becky, was that what you were trying to communicate? And for you to go, I was. Thank you, team. Thank you, boss, for helping me get it out. Because there's nothing more frustrating than for creatives, Becky, when they have something to share, but there's no safe place, or there's no time, or they get judged on what they say first. And, you know, I apologize on behalf of my species as pioneers for the times we've done that. And I think celebration is also another key thing for you, because celebration is always a discipline, not a joy.
Yes.
The reason being is because you would only celebrate the thing that is as perfect as what you hoped it would be when you visioned it in the first place in your mind.
Yes.
Because it's never that perfect, because it never quite, it has to deal with human beings like me that always mess things up or don't things quite right. A lot of creative first voices almost always struggle to celebrate well enough.
Yes.
Because it was never as perfect as they hoped it would be. And we'll often talk about, you know, celebrating the 90%, because the 10% is a mirage and it's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and we won't get there. So teaching you how to celebrate, and also, if I'm your boss, celebrating with you the things which you are and the things that you've done, which you will always downplay and will always find slightly awkward, particularly if I choose to celebrate you in public, because you don't see yourself the way that everyone else sees you. You always look at the imperfection, the 10% which is not right. We look at you and go, oh my goodness, we're dealing with Superwoman. Any of that sound familiar, Becky?
Oh my goodness, that is exactly who I am. And I will tell you, the support challenge matrix was one of the biggest tools that opened my eyes as to how I was handling myself, supporting and challenging myself, but also with my kids, because I was holding them to those perfectionist tendencies. And as learning about this, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's not fair. So it was like an eye-opening experience for me to say, hey, like, celebrate them, learn how to celebrate them. So
internal accusation is always the kryptonite for the creative connector pioneer, because it's never as perfect as it could be. And it's amazing how weary it can become, appearing to deliver less than you thought you'd promised people or they deserved.
Yes.
So I always say to creatives is, if you internalize your own critique, you will always be highly challenging of yourself and very rarely highly supportive. So it's so easy for you, you know, Tracy brings the visual back up, your self tendency, Becky, and it will be for every creative connector pioneer, is you will always tend to dominate yourself. You will always tend to judge yourself more harshly. So I always say to my people like you, don't listen to the internal voice of accusation and critique and assume that that is data. Because in the end, what you need more than anything in terms of support is for people to speak the truth in love to you. So, you know, I love the fact that somebody just pinged up on this, that you're an amazing coach, Becky, because you will look at that and go, here it comes again. Thank you, Leslie, for doing that. You will look at that and go, oh, I'm sure she doesn't know me well enough, or I'm sure she could have a better one, or learning to basically be able to own the fact I'm really good at what I do will only happen because people in the external world speak truth over you enough that you actually begin to believe it about yourself. So if I'm your boss, I'm going out of my way to celebrate you, not in a tokenistic way, because there's so much I can celebrate, but because you need to hear it often in order to reach an equilibrium where the internal voice of accusation is, if not drowned out, at least it's less than the voice that is being spoken over you. So if you know Becky, if you work with Becky, if you love Becky, you can tell her as often as you want what you want to celebrate about the amazing woman she is, and she will never, ever become arrogant. There is no such thing as an arrogant creative connector pioneer. It's just not possible for that to happen. So if you think about it, challenge for you would always be done incredibly gently because any challenge I give you, you will multiply, magnify, and internalize as being far bigger than it actually was.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever done that?
True. Oh my goodness. Yes, that's total truth.
So you have to be really careful. Now, if you're a person that actually is, very good at receiving challenge, give it challenge, we tend to assume everyone's like us, and you can easily crush the genius of the creative connector pioneer if you just are ill-disciplined with challenge, because things that are throwaway comments for some voices, everything that is anyway challenging or negative, you will internalize and almost self-inflict the wound and push it in further and then let it fester. And then by the time it's finished, it basically is something which is way bigger than the person ever believed. So, I mean, it's almost like I know how you're wired back, isn't it? The other thing I say to the INFJ or the Creative Connector Pioneer, interestingly, nurture a guardian, a fourth and fifth voice. So everyone who knows Becky goes like, she's the most caring, compassionate, organized, disciplined, consistent person I know. You could fake it as a nurturer guardian and everyone will believe you. So here's the problem with you. You're so talented, and anything you feel is a potential weakness, you will spend forever trying to make excellent. So without meaning to, often what happens is the Creative Connector Pioneer or the INFJ spends all of their time working on the things that they think they ought to be better at, rather than allowing themselves to live in their 70-30 of using the superpowers they're given. So you do care about people deeply, but actually you really care about helping people make breakthroughs into life-giving futures, which is why I love what you're doing at the moment. But the other thing that people often miss with people like you, Becky, is you would rather do it for the few that are as committed to making the size of breakthrough that is commensurate with what you hope they will achieve. So if I overwhelm you with lots of needy people who don't really want to change, I can actually see your caring organizational skills and put you into roles which you do sacrificially, because it would never be the case that you would complain about anything I ask you to do. You never want anyone to think you were too important to be doing the basic caring and the detail work. But if you're not careful, you can really end up in the wrong seat or even on the right bus, because everyone begins to treat you as a nurturer guardian, because that's what they see you doing, because you see the need. Ever seen that one happen?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
So the last one for you is to go, the challenge is for most Creative Connector pioneers is ever to believe you've learnt enough to be able to share it. So your internal perfectionism and drive for intellectual mastery will often mean you'll be studying degrees all of your life. I'm reconciled to that. But what I always say to me is to go, what your standards for thinking I'm ready to share something are so much higher than everyone else's. That sometimes learning how to share what's good rather than what's perfect is still incredibly life-giving for those on the other side of you. So you being a health coach, a career coach, a team coach, you will always look at, well, I haven't done all the certifications, or I haven't done this, or I haven't done that. And in the end, for you to know, if I'm your boss, I'm constantly pushing you forward, going, Becky, you know enough. Everyone loves learning from you. You model everything you are, and your ability to connect with people is so superpower that actually in the end, those you let in will fall in love with you in a way that you probably don't realize how much influence you actually have. So I hope I sound like a nice boss to have, Becky.
You definitely do. Yeah, I would say the other thing with the Creative Connector Pioneer is that when we're trying to put ourselves out there, we still always try to critique it and make it better. So no matter how much we take one step forward, it's almost like two steps back if we're not careful. I fall into that sometimes. So just knowing that as a tendency of who I am has helped me kind of break through some of those walls. But yeah, absolutely.
So celebrating your imperfection is the hardest thing of all, because in some ways it's like realizing you're not quite as perfect as you'd hoped you would be is one thing. Learning to celebrate your imperfection, your humanity, and your brokenness is usually the final stage of it's okay to be me.
Yeah,
And in
absolutely.
some ways, you don't have to talk about this, but I love the fact that actually, when you shared, I'm a single mum of two.
Mm-hmm.
For an INFJ, I can only imagine the journey of the having this perfect vision of what marriage would be, for you to actually be able to go, but this is me. And actually the fact that it hasn't, it only makes you more easy for people to connect to. It's not something which is difficult. And I really admire that about you, because I know enough about INFJs to know to share that and to put that out there as this is who I am.
Yeah.
Actually, in the end, is vulnerability.
Yes.
And your vulnerability actually makes the perfection piece that people see, this incredible put together woman who does everything. Actually, you'll invite more people to feel they can connect to you by owning the frailty and the weakness. So, that's just a celebration of you.
Yeah, I think honestly, Susie and I have had so many conversations about this, because Susie shares the same personality, and just the ability to be okay with, and like we were talking about with like sharing vulnerability is a strength of a leader. It's not a weakness.
Absolutely.
So yeah, something I've definitely had to learn along this process. But
and here's the thing: most you'll have been a model student all of your life, because not to honor someone's investment in you violates all of your values. So to teach the way to teach people like you, and it's almost a joy, because you're like a sponge. And you're so appreciative of all kinds of things. So I labor it, because you're the rarest of all the voice orders. There's only about 1.7% of the population are wired like you. And I always assume that kind of God made something very special and decided he didn't want to ruin it by adding loads more bits in. But because most people don't come across people like you that often, if you've got one in your family, or you happen to lead one, you have basically a diamond that is often covered by other things that they often allow themselves to be layered with. So actually, for me, when I find one, I'll often work quite hard at helping them, clear off the soot and the debris and go, because there's a diamond which, when it sparkles, I think it actually impacts far more people in a far more profound way than perhaps you would believe about yourself. And I often say that the INFJ, or the Creative Connects Pioneer, is very much like a diamond in the end, that when light shines through it, it refracts in all its colors, and it brings people to life in Technicolor. But you can only do it when you yourself have been liberated first.
Right. Yes.
And that's the bit where that's the breakthrough moment. And then once you're in that breakthrough, you keep living into it, and don't let people put you back, or more importantly, don't let yourself put yourself back in that place. So I'm always looking for, how do I put you in a place where you can shine, that when the light comes through, what it is you are, who you are, and what you do actually becomes the most incredible liberation of color for those around you. So I think that's what you're doing. I love the combination of the health coaching and the life coaching and things that are there. But there we go. Anything else on that one, Becky, that you want to add, or any questions on how you create a liberating culture for someone wired like you?
I think honestly, the biggest gift of Five Voices for me was that I was understanding that what I do bring to the table. So I think that liberating a creative is celebrating the fact that they can see things further ahead in the future than others, and allowing them to dream and figure out how to fit that into where they're working is awesome to have, into how to liberate them.
I say that if you have one of the things you can do is, I would say to you, Becky Family Boss, once a month we're going to have coffee. We may have it more often than that. But what I want to do is come and tell me, what can you see that I can't see yet? Where are the opportunities for our organization that I'm not aware of? And where are the threats, both internal and external, to the vision and the mission of what it is we're doing? Because if you're working with me long term, you feel alignment with the values and the direction and the purpose of what it is we're doing. So you become an incredibly valuable early warning radar system. But most people don't know how to tap into that diamond gift. So therefore they miss it. But if you have one, I promise you, you would come to me once a month, and I know you would have spent a long time thinking about it, because you want to make your contribution as perfect as possible. I'd probably have to release you from the obligation that it wasn't designed to be an onerous piece of work, and you didn't need to write me a long report in order for me to have a coffee with you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Beck. Well, this is great. I'm enjoying myself, Becky, anyway, so thank you.
Yes, I love it. It's been so fun.
It's very rare that you actually get to have a Creative Connector Pioneer in the limelight. So actually, I'm just maximizing the opportunity and making sure that we get all the learning for those I know go and listen to these, or they send them on to people who are wired this way. So my next question for you, Becky, is the one I often ask people, is go, okay, let's assume that actually we are able to take care of all the practical things of your life. Okay, so your boys, your money, your house, your mortgage, your basically everything that is required for you. So if you said to me, Steve, I need $200,000 a year, index linked, and that would take away all my worries of caring for my elderly parents, of being responsible for my college funds for my kids, and all the things that go with that. And I go, that's good. And then I said, money's not the issue. We've got plenty more. And actually, every relational network that we have in the world through Giant is going to be available to help us go after something that you would go, Steve, if I really dreamed, what would I most love to do with the life I have left, with all of those inhibitions and prohibitions gone? What would you most love to be doing? Or what would we end up be doing together? So come on, you get to, as a creative, you get to dream out loud, Becky. I'll ask clarifying questions to make sure I understand it. But as long as you've understood the parameters are, there are no limits on this. And not to be, for you, think, oh, if I said that, people would think I'm a big picture dreamer and I'm being naive. We're into what's in you if all of the inhibitions and prohibitions disappear.
Yeah, I would say I have definitely found my niche with coaching, and the two places I feel really called to coaching are still in helping liberate women, especially with stuff like body image, self-image. So health coaching is still just part of my DNA, and like really helping to liberate them in that fashion. And then also with coaching medical offices. And I think it's just because I've had such great experiences in both realms of coaching. So coming up with a system to try to integrate 5 voices and increasing team communication within every health system, every private medical office, and giving people the tools to improve communication is like a vision that I have right now. And then the other piece of it with women is just helping them with having a better self-image, and helping them with mindset, and helping them get to a place where they feel really healthy and good about themselves. The other big dream that I have, a bucket list dream and goal that I have, is I want to be an author. I want to write books, because books have been such a blessing in my life. And I believe that authors really actually do speak to people with the words that they're using in their books. And so it's definitely a dream of mine to be an author. So if we were working together, I would likely ask you to mentor me in that process.
Of course.
And then helping to set up like a business. I've always been, well, I would say the last decade I've been enamored with business and studying how to set up your own business and just the ins and outs of it. So becoming my own consultant, that's another dream and goal of mine.
So when I'm listening, Becky, I'm really asking, does what you're dreaming, is it big enough for who I meet in you? Does it align with how you're made, so that you're in your 70-30, and what would you need? So in some ways, I really love what you're saying, and I can see it in you. And I think that whenever your pioneer guardian is 3 and 5 in the voice order, it means that some of the frustration sometimes is to see the big picture vision, but not really know how to get from where we are now to how we get there. So in a sense, I would be a good business partner for you, because I love the ability to sit down and work out, okay, we're here, how do we get there? And my tendency will always be to want to scale things far bigger than you will want them to. You will want to do depth for the few, and I will go, but what about this, or what about that? And I think that's where digital is so valuable. But you have, I think if you the health system and the putting 5 voices into it, I go like, that's not a big enough dream for you.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be plenty of people who will help do that. And in some ways, it's because it's been your context where you experienced poor leadership and saw it. It's inevitable that that is a passion, because you see people getting hurt, and values being violated, and all of that basically causes deep distress in you. So you're connected to that. But when I look at the idea of being a liberator and being to women and to actually helping them understand who they're made, I wrote here, I can see you being a guru. I can see you writing, but writing is a communication which will be good for you to capture your thoughts.
Yes.
It is not the medium of the digital world. So in a sense, I could see you very, very easily having your own YouTube channel, social media, your own TV show, because I think there's something about you which actually women will resonate with. So a lot of the people who appear on the stage of these big things are often, they're more forceful characters, they're more ambitious characters, and they actually are less winsome than you are. But there is an incredible inner strength to you that actually is both strong enough to want to achieve something, but also humble and winsome enough that you would never push yourself forward. Which actually, for most women, don't forget, 70% of women are feelers. They're not always pushing themselves forward into the limelight. So I was joking with the new latest diversity and inclusion going, we need more women on boards, and I agree. But it would also be nice if we had more diversity in the voices and personalities of some of those characters.
Yes.
So I go, as you craft your writing, that will allow you to mine out the depth of what it is you really want to share. I would go, what's the message that God's given you for women? What is it you really want to share with them? What is the full liberation? Now, your health, well-being, and effectively with your background and the other things you have, all of that will be a way in. But I suspect I know you well enough, even from this, to go, that actually what you really want is depth in a transformation of the identity of who women know themselves to be. And then how they live out that in a world which is far from perfect. So I would happily champion back. You'd have a talk show, you'd have a YouTube channel, you would have, and because actually for you to monetize it is actually quite difficult. It feels like almost a bit grubby. That in some ways you can do this without really having to worry about the money. People will want to sponsor you. They will want you to do product placement for them. And here's the most lovely thing about the Creative Connector. Once you believe in a product, you are an unbelievably persuasive ambassador for that brand. But it's never about the money. It's always about going, this is going to help the people I'm committed to actually live life better than they are at the moment. So from that point of view, I will be looking for some strategic partners that actually, I would say, so come on, in the way you coach, the way you do health, what are the things you recommend already? And how might they actually benefit from the fact that you lending brand association is going to be good for them? But I think I come back to Becky, I think the brokenness piece is actually your superpower, because if you didn't have it, people would just think you look too perfect.
No, I can 100% identify with that. And honestly, with writing, it's just the piece where I feel like I can connect with people the most, because I've always had that connection with books and authors. And so no, I can definitely connect with that.
So what's the first 3 books you're going to write? Because obviously I know you need to write the books for your own self-fulfillment and really to get the unconscious competence and genius out before we then begin to look, how do we make it available to the 95% of the world that never read books, who never have time to read those books. But it's almost like books are a great way for you to get out the depth of who you are and what you want to share.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably need someone who's a little less deep as you than to think how we make that content available in bite-sized chunks through the multiple media that is available to us today. Because for you to do that would be almost to dilute it to a point where you would almost go, oh, but I want them to have more. So come on, give us the first 3 books we're going to write on. What are the topics?
So the topic for the first book would likely be talking about brokenness. The second would be for women, because I feel like we still need to ask permission to be who we are. And then the third one is about evolving, like that as humans we're allowed to evolve and experience different things. But those are like 3 topics that come to mind.
Boom. Well, that's the deep end. You see, that's you being able to share that. And in terms of when you do your health coaching, are there any particular products, brands, things that you already use that you look at and go, I could vouch for these?
The company, I work full-time with a company right now, and definitely feel empowered by the mission that they have. So definitely feel that. But yeah, there are definitely other products that I feel like that I would be able to vouch for and things. But yes.
And do we have a brand name for this, or is it just Becky Wolfe Inc.?
Right now, it would be just Becky Wolfe Coaching, just kind of keeping it open because I'm still trying to figure out the piece of leadership coaching versus health coaching.
Yeah, I love that. So the parts of that I think I'm really in. I think that you could do. I think that basically you could end up being somebody that people look to as a real guru figure and someone who encourages others who struggle with similar things or whatever it might be. And I just want to encourage you to go. The hardest part of writing any book is starting.
Yes.
So the hardest thing to do is to go, how does it be perfect before I even start drafting it?
Yes.
But to actually recognize that one of the things you might find helpful is to actually have a very small group of people. I would probably gather 3 to 6 women, who potentially are the audience. And what I do is rather than write first, I would teach first.
Okay, that's great advice.
So map out your chapters. What are the topics you want to speak on? What are the hallmarks? And then actually say to them, guys, each chapter is going to be a tutorial. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share something of what I have without having to put it all into perfect words. And I'm going to engage with you around the topic to see how it resonates. If you can find a different first voice, so say you had 5 people and you had 5 women representing 5 foundational voices, because that's the way Jeremy and I have always written books. People go like, this is great. We go, well, of course it's going to be great. Yeah. We actually put it out to all the 16 voice combinations for feedback. And if everyone likes it, then the whole world would like it. But I think the idea for you, it may be a great stepping stone, because the fear of writing a perfect chapter is often a paralysis.
Yes.
The thought that you actually create a structure, and then from your structure, actually teach each as a mini tutorial where you share for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then you invite questions, you record it, and things will come out when you answer the questions, which would not have appeared in your book if you just had to pull it from your own thinking.
Yeah,
and that way, then they can actually be people that get invested in directly by you. So they experience you being you, but they also, in return for that, help you craft what is it you're trying to say and how do you put that and capture it. Because I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of people will benefit from that. And I love the depth of, dealing with brokenness, the mission to be, and how we evolve as humans. I mean, that's the deep end, Becky. It's not like soft, fluffy. You're never going to write a bestseller, but I don't think that really matters to you as long as it's authentic and the right people engage with it. So does that feel encouraging?
Yes, definitely feels encouraging. Yes.
I don't see any huge barriers apart from the fact you need time.
Yes.
But this isn't going to cost a huge amount of money to set up because you're already doing it.
Yes.
And actually, if you think through who might your group to work through, they will be so grateful for being in the coaching group with you that they will probably walk with you through all of the books and all of what you do. So I'd really have a think private, go, who are the people that I would really love to be able to pour into? And if they can be different foundational voices, that would be awesome. So
yeah. Great advice, Steve. I appreciate it.
But I'm going to follow this story. I'm in. I'm happy to help in any way I can. And when it's ready as I said, I'll connect you with Ellie as well, because there may be bits and pieces of something I'm already involved in that actually fit into this particular. That's my pioneer connector. I only connect people that I believe are strategically significant. So
I love it.
Passed all my filters. Any final thoughts, questions from you, Becky, for today, or are we done?
No, actually, I think it was such a great time to spend with you, Steve. I appreciate all of your insights. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity. This was amazing.
Well, I appreciate you, and thank you for being brave enough to let me do my personality Yoda stuff and at least make it available to other people. So I hope other Creative Connector pioneers also feel liberated by what we shared. And for those of you leading them or are raising them or are married to them or whatever it might be, I hope there are insights here which will help. So next week, I think we have Antoine Gaines as our guardian nurturer, but we will have to wait and see. And if not, I'll bring Tracy on because she can definitely help do that one. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being part of what we've done today. And Becky, thank you for being such an amazing guest. We are grateful for you, and I know a lot of people will be blessed by what you shared. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve.